1 in 5 suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health.
There we are. Okay.
We had a little sound break there.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays.
We're Marla and Dave.
Yes.
I'm Marla.
And I'm Dave.
What would happen if you just said, "Hey, I'm Marla," and I said, "I'm Dave"? You think that we would confuse people?
I'm pretty sure someone might believe it. Anyway,
just checking.
Anyway, we want to welcome you to the show. And before we get started, we want to remind you to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. There it is on your screen. But as usual, we have a great show planned for you today. Our guest is Kent Toussaint. Kent is a licensed therapist and specializes in counseling teens. There, my sound went out again. I don't know how that happened.
Is it me?
Okay, so I can't hear myself, but I hope you can hear me. Like I said, our guest is Kent Toussaint. He's a licensed therapist and specializes in counseling teenagers, and we hope that we pray for him because I don't know how he does it, but God bless him. I'm just joking. He owns the Teen Therapy Center in Woodland Hills and also has a nonprofit called Child and Teen Counseling. Kent says you can't control teens, but you can influence them. A lot of gems like that will be coming from Kent today, and so we can't wait. We look forward to that, and as usual, we're thankful for and appreciate the mental health professionals that grace us here on Mental Health Mondays. When we come back, our conversation with Kent Toussaint.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
All right, Kent, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
We only have one goal. Just change our opinions. Save us.
Okay.
Help us.
That's what I do every day.
And like I said, I was joking when I said, God bless him for specializing in teenagers and young adults. But I like Marla said, I kind of wasn't joking. I don't know how you do it.
And you know why we feel that way? Because we used to be those same very people.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we're here now, so we just snub our nose down at our past.
I love working with teenagers, and I've been doing it my whole career as a therapist, and I just love that transition period that teens are in between a childhood and adulthood.
Yeah.
But, when you're working with a teenager, you have to understand what being a kid is. You have to understand what being a young adult is, and a parent. It's like the whole cosmos of it put into one.
So my first question off the jump is, as a parent, do we lose sight? Because I was saying that in the car that I really seriously, before I had children, used to say that my conversation with myself was, my father would say to my mother, expletive, these kids, basically aren't these kids, they're going to grow up, or what's wrong with these kids? And I literally said, when I have children, I'm never, because at some point I'm going to have to look at them and realize did you forget? You had to be a kid at one point. Nobody was born this size with a career.
Right.
So what is it? I mean, is it, you think that the trouble most parents have in a normal teen relationship with their teenage children is just being stuck in the daily regimen of the stresses of raising, or do we just lose sight and patience on the fact that they're going through that tunnel of transition?
All of it. I mean, because you brought up some really good points here. The one thing is, when we were kids, we were seeing our life through our adolescent eyes and not understanding why our parents didn't get it, why they were stupid. Well, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my parents were like idiots from like when I was 13, but they recovered when I got to about 24, 25. They recovered.
They got smarter.
Yeah, they recovered from idiocy, from like about 10 years of idiocy. Because in my mind, like, I knew everything. I mean, I was the smartest I had ever been. And so when we look back on our childhood and our teenage years, we don't recognize how much of a knuckleheads we were.
Yeah.
You know, and then on the other point you're saying is we get so bogged down in getting dinner ready, getting the laundry done, getting the tax return done, getting that novel written, you know, getting the career going. Adulting, yes, all the adult things we do. And it's so easy to just put a kid in front of a TV or an Xbox and go do this because they're satisfied. I mean, you could put a kid 8 a.m, Saturday morning, in their pajamas in front of their Xbox, and they won't have to pee. They won't need to drink water. They won't get any dirty. They don't need a bath all day long. You can get a lot of stuff done that way.
So Kent, before we keep going on, I want to just back up just a little bit and say what motivated you to become a therapist to begin with?
Well, I actually thought about it in high school, but I never really pursued it. I was pursuing another career in the entertainment industry, and then I kind of got burnt out on that. And then someone said, "Kent, you should be a therapist. You're everyone's therapist already. You should get paid to do this." So,
and what do they mean by you're everyone's therapist already?
People, you were easy to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the kind of guy that someone just in line at the grocery store just talks about their divorce. I'm like, oh, okay, let's talk about that. I mean, I'm just always been that person. I've always been the person with my friends that I'm the person that people talk to, and I've always been comfortable being that listener type person.
So you and Marla share that in common.
There you go.
It's a strange trait, but there you go.
David, this right quick, I'll just give you one. We would go into our mailbox.
Yeah.
And he would go in literally to get the mail and come out, and there would be an older gentleman standing outside the mailbox, the like UPS, and they would be talking about whatever is personal and crying. And David was like, "What?" I went in literally to get the mail, and I came out, and this grown man is bawling.
Yeah.
And Dave gets in the car. I'm like, "Yeah, this is a testicular cancer situation." He was like, "What?" Okay, just get in the car.
Yeah. And so I'm glad that you kind of gave us that little background.
Yeah.
And I guess what you and I were talking about before the show actually started off camera.
No worries.
Basically, you were describing it as, you got to learn to speak their language.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were just saying how you felt that your parents were just idiots from a certain time period when you were going through a transition.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are going to see me the same way, I'm sure.
Exactly.
But like when I'm training other therapists, it's learning how to speak teenager and learning how to speak parent, because there's two different languages. You have to understand where this 13-year-old is coming from. You have to understand from their perspective. Now, their logic may not meet your logic, but
is it actually logic?
For them, it is. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
For them, I mean, again, it's hard to remember what our logic was at 13 because it made so much sense to us. I mean, I remember being a teenager thinking, I don't need my parents. I have it all figured out. If I just had enough money, I could go live. I didn't know how to do that when I was 14.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I thought I could.
Right. Give me your car keys and give me your bank account, and I'm straight. And peace out.
Yeah. I thought at 14 I could do it all, but of course I couldn't because I didn't know. But I knew more than I'd ever known before in my life. I just didn't know there was a lot more to know.
Right.
And with most teenagers, they're the smartest they've ever been. They just don't know there's so much more to know yet.
Right.
And
That's a
in
good
that
point.
they also, fact that they know more now, they can see the flaws in their parents because parents are flawed people like everyone else is. And they can see, so since you don't know this about anime but you don't know this about this rap artist, clearly you don't know enough, and I know better than you.
Yeah, that's
Go
okay.
ahead,
Marla,
now,
ask your
I'm
question.
staring into Kent's eyes because I'm thinking, people talk to me all the time, but nothing in me wants to get a career only talking to teens. So I'm wondering how that, like, I'm literally looking at you going, how did you make that jump from, like, I get the therapy thing, but to literally want to specialize, and that's a very interesting point.
It's most therapists don't want to work with teenagers. I'm not the only one out there.
Sure.
There's plenty out there, but it's challenging. It's so much harder than working with an adult. If a 40-year-old comes in your office, for me, that's an easy session. I'm not trying to downplay what they're going through.
Because you want a conclusion, and most people want a completion.
Yeah.
Teens are in a perpetual transition of thought, of position in life. So it almost feels like.
And you have to work through the initial resistance, because most teenagers come going, I don't want to do this. Who are you?
Right.
I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
And going through that process of helping them disarm, helping them realize this is safe, and you really do want to talk, and this may be the safe place you've got. And once they start realizing it, and you have that one kid's like, I'm never going to talk to you, and then 3 months later, I'm so sorry I can't make the appointment. Can we please reschedule? I really want to come in and talk. And it's really cool to be there and to support that kid. It's and
so where is that? Because I can understand from one perspective learning how to talk teenagers, so to speak, as a foreign language to most adults, but where it doesn't seem like the mindset of the teenager. Once you start to speak the language, is that what unlocks the door automatically to their compliance?
I don't think there's anything automatic,
right?
But I think it increases the chances of that self-reflection, of being able to look at oneself and go, oh, wait a minute, maybe I need to look at this in a different way. And if we have trust, if there's a trusting therapeutic relationship, then you can go there. But if you just go in there and say, hey, no, don't do that, you turn into a vice principal.
Right. So, I mean, you brought up the example of a kid can sit there, and not just kids these days, adults can sit there and play Xbox all day long.
Yeah.
I still struggle to feel like, even if you felt that was a good idea, how did you think that that's going to be productive at doing anything else in life that you need? That is
what are we talking about?
The teenager playing Xbox all day long.
For the teenager's perspective or the parents'
From
perspective?
the teenager's perspective, how is it? It's almost like, why don't they easily see that that's problematic when that's what you want to do all day long?
I think it's totally the opposite, because a teenager, adolescents, that brain development, won't go into too much detail, but their ability to see cause and effect is impaired. And that's not fully developed till about roughly 25 years old.
The logic center.
Yeah, that prefrontal cortex, the executive functioning of the brain. So they're all into what I want now. And if I can just play video games now all day and feel powerful and feel connected and feel safe, I'm doing that.
Because the other things that they would need to logic through are already managed. In other words, their logic isn't going to get me groceries, because the groceries are still there. Yeah. I totally get it. I totally get it. So
I guess I don't think I actually spoke that language even as a teenager. To be honest with you, I was laying bricks. I was working at 13, so I've been working my entire life.
You're from the country, Dave. Okay?
Maybe that's it. Maybe
I'm a city kid. I'm the one that was booking an appointment with Kent, and we'll be back with more Kent in a minute.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Studies show the changes in people's lives due to the pandemic have taken a serious toll on their mental health. Stress and worry about contracting the virus, coupled with job losses, loss of childcare, as well as the devastating loss of loved ones due to COVID-19, are just a few ways in which the pandemic may be having an effect on people's mental health.
According to the Census Bureau's Household Pulse Survey, shows that the economic downturn has led to mental health issues and increased substance abuse in the United States, with mental illness on track to become the leading pre-existing condition in the United States. What can you do about it?
When you go to the ballot box, it's important to know which candidate is fighting for issues that matter to you. Educate yourself and find out which candidates have demonstrated support for issues surrounding mental health.
I promise you this, that together we can make a difference. Remember, your overall health has to include your mental health. This message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically live my personality on my scene.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
So, Ken, I have to hit you with some questions I think every parent wants to know.
Okay.
All right. So I am a parent that recognizes the need, and I'm able to have my child come and engage in therapy with you. What is the age where HIPAA becomes a issue or a hindrance to you being able to share sessions? What are the rules of confidentiality when you're dealing with a teen?
Sure. So a child, whether they're 4 years old, 14, 24, 54, according to state law, has a right to their confidentiality in session.
I didn't know that. I thought it started at 18.
So
Wow.
whatever child says in session, they have the right, according to state law, to that confidentiality.
State of California.
State of California.
Okay.
Is that every state or just?
I don't know the other states 'cause I'm not licensed in those
Right,
states,
yeah.
but I know in California you are entitled to that confidentiality.
Okay.
Now, if I'm working with a kid and I think this is something parents should know, I will talk with that kid and work with that kid so we can bring the parents into the session and they can tell the parents, because I think it's much more empowering for the kid to say, hey, mom or dad, this is my issue, this is my problem, this is what I want, these are my needs. If I go over their head, not only am I taking that power away from them, I'm also betraying their trust. And they're going to stop trusting me and the next 5 therapists you try to hire.
Okay. Number 2, what age do you begin to see children literally and then on a recommended level?
I've seen kids as young as 3 years old with a lot of parental involvement, but we see kids of all ages. And parents are a part of it depending on what the clients and the family's needs are. Some families, the parents are, standing back and just letting the kid go through the process. Other times, parents are very much a part of the process. It just depends on what they need at the time.
Well, something that you said when you were talking to our one of our producers here at the show, Hannah, you said, and I quote, teens need to connect, and yet they push their parents away.
Yeah.
That almost seems dichotomous. Explain that to me.
So a big part of a child's identity is their relation with their parents. So the first 10, 11 years or so, it's all about them. Like, imagine identity is like a hat, okay? And they have one hat, the hat that you've given them. And then as they start going through adolescence and their brain, that prefrontal cortex starts developing, they start developing new identities. I like this music. I like this political point of view. I like these friends, and all these different hats, which can be really scary to parents because it's different than their feelings and their views. But as they go on, they're normally going to start pushing away from parents, which is normal.
That's the individuation process.
Yeah, if they didn't, they'd never leave the house. We want them to leave the house.
Right.
So we need something strong and stable for them to push away from so they can bounce back. Like dribbling a basketball in a sense. But if they have nothing strong to push away from, they wander around and they start getting involved with other kids that are potentially not a good influence.
Wandering as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all wandering.
The wanderers.
And they go, well, weed, nothing's wrong with weed, it's all natural. And they start having that dialogue, which is, we know, not true.
Right.
But the good thing about that hat identity thing is by the time your kid is 25, they put a patchwork of all the hats together. The biggest patch is your patch. So you have the opportunity to give them a really positive, loving patch on their hat, if that makes sense.
Okay, so now it's coming at you with a couple more questions.
Yeah.
At what point do you, Kent Toussaint, decide, or any therapist, and I can only talk to you about you, so forget I said the any therapist part, that you're going beyond just a basic psychological therapy direction, behavioral therapy, and this child you're identifying needs the next step, which is psychiatry or more severe mental health issues? Because the thing we've been told inherently is you can't even decide that till they're 20, 21, 18. Like, no such thing as a diagnosis of, any of the brain differences that are more severe, which is, we call it brain differences. What do you say how do you answer that?
Well, medically, there's only two, as a licensed marriage family therapist, only 2 types of medical advice I can give. Number 1, consult your doctor, or 2, get a second opinion. I can give those, but I can't.
And you can identify those behaviors at any age. Like schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia is generally not happening at younger age. Usually, it's like late teens, early 20s. Okay. Bipolar can happen in mid-teens, but it's kind of rare.
Right.
But things like anxiety, depression, very common in kids and teens. which are, something that we see a lot of. But if it's something that's going beyond, let's say it's like we're thinking, hey, maybe this is ADHD or autism spectrum disorder, that may be a thing where, hey, you may want to consult with a psychologist who can do a full battery of tests and come up with a concise.
You mean a psychiatrist?
Well, psychiatrist does the medication.
Oh, okay. I thought you. Okay.
Yeah,
so you mean psychologist?
Psychologists do the testing.
Got it.
I mean, I'm going to paint with a broad brush here.
Got it.
There's
okay.
exceptions, but psychologists generally do the testing. Psychiatrists do the medication. Now, are there psychiatrists who do testing? I'm sure there are.
Right.
But it's kind of the exception to the rule.
Right.
But if you want a concise diagnosis, going to the full battery of tests, a psychologist, neuropsychologist, clinical psychologist, probably the way you want to go, and then you can take that to the psychiatrist and say, listen, look at all these tests. This is the diagnosis.
And I would assume that if the psychologist comes up with something that is extreme from the testing, they already recommend going to the psychiatrist.
Probably.
And probably have one that they know works in tandem with them.
Yeah, I mean, I know I have several psychologists I refer to, several psychiatrists I refer to, because those referrals come up occasionally.
Right. I have a part 2 to that question. In the face of all of the increases that we're seeing across the spectrum with mental health, are you seeing more distress with anxiety and depression with children since COVID? Or is it, you think?
No, I think it's the same. I mean, I've always been in that world,
Right,
so it's
right.
always been around.
So, it's not like, a flux of more people coming forward and saying, hey.
What I will say, I see more and more of the social anxiety, because so many kids were isolated for so long and lost connection, and it's really hard to rebuild those connections. That's where I see the biggest struggle with all of how COVID has impacted our society.
So keeping it right there for a minute, what are some of the commonalities that you see in your practice when it comes to kids not having that social interaction at school for the last couple of years and then suddenly it coming back? Does that erase some of those problems, or are some of those issues for that isolation period still lingering?
If the kids can get back into a social circle and get back into activities, generally they're okay. But there are a lot of kids who are refusing to do that. They used to play baseball. Like, oh, no, I haven't played in 2 years. I don't know if they'll even remember me. I don't know if I'm good anymore. And it's just, but I can hide with my PlayStation, and I can hide. I can go over Discord and talk to friends over Discord. No one can see me, and I can just be who I want to be in this isolated bubble. And that's where I see is getting kids off of screens and face to face. And that's the toughest thing I see.
How much reasonable screen time? Because a lot of parents struggle with this.
Yes.
How much time would you say would be a reasonable, manageable amount of screen time that you would recommend for a child?
I wish I had that answer, because it really depends on every family. But I will say this. Balance it with if your kid is having social interactions, they're a part of something, they're in school band, they're in the basketball team, they're in scouts. It doesn't really matter what they're doing, but they're involved in something organized and social. They're doing okay in school, they're interacting with the family. If they can do all those things and there's free time, then okay.
Right.
I just think families have a very hard time finding that balance.
When it switches
So
over.
would the general principle be, as long as your kid seems like they're developing on what we would consider the normal track and they have social activities, they have friends, they're doing well in school, it's not really about minimizing their screen time. It's really about allowing them to be productive and handling themselves. And
balance.
If they can do that with balance, then so be it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Like we told you, you're going to get a lot of gems here and a lot of knowledge and a lot of fun and information here with our conversation with Kent Toussaint. We'll be right back.
No.
All right, the fun music means that Marla
Dave
will
is
start pole
Dave's
dancing
gonna pole dance today.
right away. Marla, we're waiting.
David,
Marla, oh.
you know what? Until you get me a proper pole, you're not about to run me all up over.
You know what I was there it is. Boom. All right. Okay, there. You
This is so cheesy. They want me to pole dance without. They want me to seat dance and call it pole dancing. Don't think I'm
Well,
tricked
the reason
by this
why
whole
the
charade.
pole dancing, play on words, it's time for the poll question. As you know, the fun music indicates. So, Kent, we're going to allow you or ask you to participate in our poll question.
Okay.
Fun. Last week, we asked our guest,
Destiny
Champion, which of these conditions are you most likely to develop? Diabetes, cancer of any kind, mental illness, or heart disease. Over your lifetime, which of these conditions are you most likely to develop?
I'm guessing mental illness.
It
know
seems
what?
like that would be the answer, right?
And because this is Mental Health Monday, ding, 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 ding.
You are
Kent
correct.
Toussaint has won a brand new mic there on this thing. It's right there.
And for the record, last week, Destiny Champion had the right answer as
did.
well. So the new question that's just for you, Kent, for next week is what percentage of Americans report that worry and stress related to the COVID-19 pandemic are hurting their mental health? 27%, 38%, or 45%?
Do you need to hear those again, sir?
No, I'm going 45.
Right?
Wow.
Well,
So we can't give her the answer this week.
And you won't know until next week, but he went there. And then he
And
went
he went
somewhere,
there with conviction.
and he was sure.
Yes.
But will he be right? Yo, that you won't know until next week.
Everyone-
But wait, there's more.
We just remind you to text $1 to 8. Text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to support our campaign that says $1 today keeps the stigma away.
So we want to keep bringing you this great content. Make sure you text GIVE.
Back to the show. All right, Kent. As usual, you were. One would think that some of these things that you're saying should be. People have been raising kids for.
It's different.
Ever since there've been human beings.
It's different. But honestly, we've kind of raised ourselves. You just said you were laying bricks at 13 years old. That's raising oneself.
Well, to be honest with you, my father made me.
Well,
that
I'm
was
just
the
saying.
thing. He took me to my uncle's house and said, "Okay, it's time for him to start working."
You were a baby day
He's
laborer.
going to start working with you.
Yeah.
Dave but I mean.
He was a day laborer. You could have found Dave at the Home Depot in Huntsville, Alabama, picked him up.
Well, that sounds funny. There was no such thing as Home Depot when I was growing up.
It sounded good, though, right?
Back in my day, I walked 75,000 miles to school in the snow with no shoes. Matter of fact, we didn't even have feet back then.
Stop
No,
it.
just joking.
Kent, I have one more very important question that I know a lot of our listeners are going to want to hear this. How attainable is it for a parent to be able to get into counseling and therapy for their children? Because we have found with our son and his mental health challenges that when he hit the wall, I was shocked at how inaccessible financially and really finding someone. And so I think that that's a deterrent for a lot of parents. I really think my child needs to have that confidential third person that is qualified, but I can't afford it.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
So I hear this all the time because Teen Therapy Center, the group practice I run, is a cash pay practice. We don't do insurance. And, we have different fees for different therapists. And people say, well, I'll go through my insurance, but they can't find a therapist on their insurance either because they're all so booked up because of COVID lately. So we have developed the nonprofit Child and Teen Counseling. We're not the only nonprofit in town. There's several of them. But where we train therapists who are still in their grad school program, who are in their master's program, how to work with kids and teens. And we have a sliding scale. So, we can work with parents of pretty much every budget. In fact, we actually have a program right now with VIP High School in Reseda where we're putting therapists on campus doing free therapy on campus. And
That's amazing.
And we love that we started this, and we're going to keep it going.
And so
I love that you started that as well.
So yes, and Tony put up on if you missed it, just in his conversation, you can go back and review it. Just rewind your YouTube when this is live is over, and see the nonprofit. So that is, sir, I take my hat off because there's so many of us, and this is serious, where we're looking for help. I'm a parent who's still looking for help, and mine are adults. If I could give them the option, or I can offer, and if either one of my two adult children who are in need turned to David and I today and said, we're willing to go through the process, then my stress becomes, is it affordable?
Yeah.
I promise you, because first they have to want it, but in the child's case, that's not the problem. The problem is the parents feeling also overwhelmed and inadequate, that it's something that's not affordable and it's out of reach, especially to disenfranchised and lower income families. It's not even a consideration.
And it's hard to find the funding for that. I'm sure there are many nonprofits that would benefit from, wealthy, donors
Right.
to help, because I'm sure we'd all like to give free therapy to people, but
Right.
we got to keep the doors open.
And when you can't do that, then you tell your son to go lay bricks.
Right before we move to you giving us your final best advice or parting thought of inspiration, talk to us a little bit right quickly about when should you start a child on therapy? And you said earlier that it's not really about the issue, so you can start them as young as 3. But should therapy be something that a parent looks at a normal child raising tool, so to speak?
Therapy does not you don't have to do therapy for everything, obviously, but I think therapy is there. You want to get therapy before the crisis situation, because in the crisis situation, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And the example I often give is, 2 people, let's say a man and woman for this situation, fall in love, they get married, they have kids, they love each other. This is wonderful, family, and they have kids and they have careers, and they just kind of put the marriage on hold. So it's going to be there. It's okay. It's okay. It's going to be there. It's going to be there. We get all these things. In 10 years, you look at your spouse and go,
Who the hell are you?
Yeah.
Why do you breathe like that?
Yeah. Are you chewing?
Yeah. And it's like, and then
That's my oxygen you just sucked up.
Okay, he's not talking to you for your living room.
because of the lack of connection, these two start bickering and bickering and bickering because it's better than the cold distance. Right. And eventually the bickering gets to such an extent that someone does something that goes beyond the pale and like, all right,
And
we're
then
out.
they end up on oxygen. 77 snapped.
And that relationship is done. Of course, they are still connected because they have their kids.
Right.
But like with our kids, it's really important when you start seeing problems, getting therapy early is probably less expensive because you're going to be in there a shorter amount of time. And the issue isn't as intense.
And
I can also
hopefully you can
imagine you've
remove the stigma.
And exactly.
So that when they have issues on their own, they know maybe I should see a therapist about
and
this.
You've trained the understanding that this is a viable outlet to be able to manage your mental health and,
Well, just like if you want to
questions
improve your tennis swing, you get a tennis coach. If you want to improve your communication or how you deal with emotions, you get a therapist.
Right.
It's
And if
the
you
same
want to
thing.
improve what you do on the pickleball court, you watch YouTube.
So let's move and let's get your best advice or word of encouragement as we end the show today.
Oh my gosh. I guess I would say is set the example for your kids, especially when they can't follow it, because they'll follow your example more
than
so
your
than the
word.
words,
Wow.
which is hard to do.
Do what I do, not what I say.
That's what they're going to do anyway. Hey, there you go.
Oh, so now you want to write songs with me. I see how this is going.
Kent, thank you
can't
so
thank you
much.
enough.
You're very welcome. Thank you. It was fun.
Absolutely.
You enjoyed this? Is fun for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fun to
Well,
hang out with.
I can tell that this is why Kent is wonderful with children. Tell everybody one more time where they can, with the two, you got a nonprofit called.
So a nonprofit called Child and Teen Counseling. The website is childteencounseling.org. And then the group practice, the same office, is called Teen Therapy Center, and that's teentherapycenter.com.
You heard it here. That's the final word from Kent Toussaint. We'll see you guys next week.